And so I remember I fell down to my knees and I just looked at this clear plastic bag in front of me and was like, how do I say bye to this lifeless dog in this garbage bag? I begged my dad, like, can you please bury her? Can you please bury her? When him and I were on the couch and he was crying, that was something I asked him, like, can you at least take her to the pet cemetery in Merced?
Well, I also knew that if you did have sex with somebody, I would want to kill him.
Yeah.
I was raised that way.
I remember knowing that. I remember knowing that.
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, our dad taught you.
Yeah, he did.
No one messes with me. I remember one time when I was in high school and I was dating that boy that you didn't like.
To the trauma verse, welcome to the trauma verse, where it's okay to be traumatized and have to hurt. My destiny, all I see ahead of me. This what God done bred in me. This what God done said to me.
Today we got my sister on. We're going to talk to her, see what her life experience is like. Isn't that right, sister?
Yes, that's right. I love my brother. He's good brother.
I wrote a song specifically called Eat Your Steak. I'm wondering how it hit you and what it felt like for you to, see me produce this song and then listen to it, and what stuck out to you.
When I first heard the song, I think it was a bit shocking. I think that even as I still listen to it now, it feels shocking that you could put words into a song, because I don't have that capability, first off. But I think there was a lot of different points in it where obviously I connected with it. It's how I felt as a child and in the moment. It's definitely reliving that moment. But then there's also so much more outside of the song. So it's like the song just touches like a little snippet, but it's crazy because there's just still so much more that I felt on that day.
Yeah. Are you up for talking about more what you felt that day? I'm super curious and would love to know.
Sure.
If you're up for it, yeah.
Sure. What do you want me to, you want me to tell my side of the story?
Yeah.
Or
does that sound like a good place to start? Maybe your side of the story, you could go from the beginning so we could hear exactly what it's like for you.
Sure. So it was a school day and I always walked home from school. So I walked home from school that day. For some reason, I was by myself walking home is what I remember. Can't remember if we were together, but I remember walking home from school. And, when you're a kid, it can be really easy to kind of forget about your dog, kind of just like not play with them. But that day, I really wanted to play with Star. So I went in the backyard, I played with her, I took her on a walk, and I wanted to give her a haircut. So I saw that some of her hair was matted. So I even went to the kitchen, grabbed some scissors, gave her a little haircut in the backyard, and spent time with her that day after school, which was unexpected because it wasn't a normal thing that I did after school.
Yeah.
So I got to spend a lot of time with her that day. And I remember even walking home that day, Dad wasn't home yet. And I knew Dad wasn't home yet because I didn't hear the music blaring from a couple blocks away.
Right.
So got home, played with her, took her on a walk, gave her a haircut, and Dad came home from the grocery store. He had steaks to make. So as usual, he was in the backyard grilling the steaks. Our little brother Bobby would always run around in a diaper in the backyard, playing in the grass and on his play set whenever Dad was grilling. And so I remember being inside. Mom was cooking the side dishes inside the kitchen. Dad was outside grilling. And then I remember hearing a scream from Bobby, which stopped you, Mom, and me in our tracks. And I remember all of us being like, what's going on? Next thing I know, I hear this sliding glass door flying open. and Dad is yelling and Bobby is screaming, and we all run over there and Bobby is just bleeding from his cheek. He has a cut on his cheek and he's bleeding, and our dad's super pissed off, super angry. And so immediately we're like, what happened? What's going on? And Dad, I don't remember Dad saying anything. I just remember that it was our responsibility to take care of Bobby's cut.
Yeah.
So I remember Dad was like, you need to take a better look at the cut or something like that. So I remember holding Bobby down on the ground, and because he was in a lot of pain, so he's like trying to, screaming, didn't want us to look at his cut. I remember I took an arm, you took an arm, and maybe Dad held his legs or something as Mom looked at his cut. And she said something like, I think that we could put a butterfly Band-Aid on it, but maybe he needs stitches. And I remember Dad saying, we're not going to the hospital. We're not taking him to the hospital. And so Mom is like, okay, like we're going to need to do butterfly stitches. So remember we went to the restroom, cleaned him off. And at some point, Dad left back outside to the backyard, and we could hear Star screeching. We could hear her crying and making noises like she was being beat. And so finally, Bobby stopped crying at some point. Finally, Star stopped screaming at some point. And then I remember thinking like, okay, finally he's done beating her. Finally, the beating is done. She must be on the side of the house at this point. And so Dad came back in, and my memory is a little bit foggy on how exactly like what happened from there of like which pieces came first. But I recall Dad calling you to go outside. And then I remember that dinner continued being cooked. I remember Dad was finishing grilling the steaks. Mom was finishing dinner. And I knew that something was wrong. I wanted to go outside to go see Star, and I was told no. And so I knew that something was up. I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
So what I don't quite remember fully is if then we ate dinner or then I went and saw Star. What I think happened is we sat down for dinner, and before dinner, I remember I was crying because I just knew something was wrong. And I was sitting on the couch and I was bawling. I couldn't stop crying. And Dad was in the backyard, and I remember Mom telling me I needed to stop crying. I was not allowed to cry. And then dinner was ready. So then we ate dinner, and we ate steak. And I remember I was crying so much that my throat was super dry. And I remember thinking, like looking at the table and being like, why are we eating dinner right now? Like my dog is either severely hurt or dead in the backyard. Like she's on the side yard right now. Why are we sitting down as a family?
Right.
When this man is right there, my little brother needs to go to the hospital. What the heck? But I was told, don't cry. You're not allowed to feel anything. You need to protect your dad. You don't ever tell anyone about anything that happened today. If anyone asks, like you don't talk about how your little brother got hurt, nothing. And so I remember these conversations were being had, but I wasn't quite sure exactly, or I wasn't quite sure yet if Star was dead. I had a feeling, but wasn't quite sure. But I remember just knowing in my gut, like, she's dead. He had to have killed her, but not wanting to believe it. Like, there's no way my dad would kill my dog that I picked out when I was 3. So I remember being told we had to eat our steak. I remember wanting to be upset at the table. I was not allowed to be upset. And I remember cutting the steak and taking a bite. And I don't know if it's because the steak was sitting on the grill for quite a while because of the whole commotion, but the steak was so dry. I could feel it going down my throat every bite. I could just feel it like slowly going down. and not wanting to eat, but being told I had to eat. I had to finish my plate. I had to eat. And forcing myself to eat because my family told me I had to. And so we finished dinner, and then I remember I kept asking, like, can I go see my dog? Can I go see my dog? And so I was told, so from what I remember is you had to go outside with Dad. And then I remember Dad came inside, and I went and sat on the couch, and I was super upset because no one would let me see my dog. And I was bawling on the couch. At that point, Mom went outside with you. Dad came inside, and I was crying on the couch. And, you know, before my mom had went outside, she told me I needed to stop crying. I was not allowed to cry. She was like, your eyes are starting to swell. I'm going to have to get cucumbers or something and put them on your eyes because your eyes are they're starting to get puffy. You're crying too much. I remember being like, I can't stop, Mom. Like, I can't stop crying. And she was like, you need to stop crying because the kids at school are going to be able to tell that you're crying. Mm-hmm. And so my dad came in, Mom left. My dad sat on the couch next to me, and I had not seen my dad cry before. And he saw me crying, and he sat on the couch, and he was very drunk, but then he started crying. He started bawling. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Catie. I'm so sorry that I'm so sorry about what I did. I'm so sorry. I know that's your dog. Stuff like that. And I remember being like, don't touch me. And he kept trying to hold me. And I was like, I don't want you to touch me. Right. And then finally he's like, you need to stop crying. And so someone came inside and told me I could say goodbye to my dog. So I walked out the garage door, which led to the door to outside. Mm-hmm. And there's just like a little patio right there by that door. And my dog was in a big clear garbage bag, lifeless, laying right there. And I had to say bye to her. And I remember I don't remember if it was Mom or Dad telling me, like, you don't have much time, but you need to say bye and you need to hurry up. And so I remember I fell down to my knees, and I just looked at this clear plastic bag in front of me, mm-hmm. and was like, how do I say bye to this lifeless dog in this garbage bag? Because this isn't my dog. Like, it was the first time I seen anything dead, really, that like I loved, that I cared for. Yeah. And so I remember I leaned over and I hugged her from the outside of the bag, and I can still remember like the crinkling of the bag, like mm-hmm. As I hugged her. And I sat there and I cried, and I like reached my hand into the bag and I pet her one last time. And then one of my mom or dad came out and was like, that's enough. It's time. You need to stop. And I remember thinking, like, how can I stop? How can I say goodbye to my dog? Right. And then I went inside, and we were all in the kitchen, and all of us had known that I took, Star on a walk that day and did all the different things. And I don't remember if it was Mom or you. One of you had said, wow, Catie, what did you do to her today? Why, or you guys had blamed it on me that she had an outburst and bit Bobby. Like, someone said, like, what did you do? Like, what'd you do today? And I was like, I played with her. Like, I took her on a walk. Like, it was such a great day with my dog, and it was being blamed on me that she acted out to my little brother. Yeah. And so that was the, first moment, the first day that I really recollect, like, having deep hatred for the very first time.
That makes sense.
I had known that our dad was an alcoholic and whatnot. But it was the first day that I felt hate inside of me, and I wasn't allowed to talk about any of it. And then I remember I had to stop crying. We had to go to bed. I begged my dad, like, can you please bury her? Can you please bury her? When him and I were on the couch and he was crying, that was something I asked him, like, can you at least take her to the pet cemetery in Merced and have like a grave for her?
Yeah.
And he was like, I promise you, I'm going to bury your dog. I promise I am. And so I was like, okay, at least like there's something. So I remember you guys loaded Star up in the back of Dad's truck. You put shovels in the bed of the truck and you left. And my mom made me go to my room, told me I needed to stop crying and I needed to rest. And then I remember my mom having a conversation with us and saying, you are not allowed to tell anyone this story. Your dad will go to jail. You guys can get taken away from us. You cannot tell anyone this story ever. Never. You protect your dad, which protects us as a family. So the next day we were walking to school. I had asked you something along the lines of like, so did you guys bury her? Did you guys take her to Merced and bury her? And you had told me like, are you stupid? Dad doesn't care about burying your dog. No, we put big rocks in her bag, tied it up, and sunk her to the bottom of Merced Lake.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember being like losing my breath as I was walking to school.
Right.
And then you being like acting like I was stupid.
Mm.
And so I remember thinking like, I need to pull it together because I have to be at school and not tell anyone what's going on.
Gosh.
And then we went to school, and my friend at the time had lived down the street from us, and she had asked me like several times throughout the day, like, what's going on? Why are you sad? And I remember being like, nothing, I'm fine. And then eventually she was like, what's going on? Like, why are you sad? And I was like, you know what? My dog died. Like, she just randomly died. And she was like, actually, I was walking by and I heard your dog screeching. I almost knocked on your door because I heard her screaming. And I thought something was wrong. And I remember panicking in that moment, being like, I need to protect my dad. And I was like, that's super weird. I'm not sure why you heard that. Like, she didn't die for any reason, right? Like, I don't know why that happened. And yeah, years later, you and I talked about, the day that Star happened. And that's when you had told me that the truth is you didn't put rocks in her bag and sink her. You guys had actually put her in the garbage can next to school.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, I thought she was at the bottom of a lake.
I'm sorry I said that to you. It was so vicious and abusive. Yeah. So can I reflect on some of what you said?
Mm-hmm.
So it's totally clear that we were very abusive towards you. And we all gave you the ultimate gaslighting of your life. And you didn't deserve that. And I'm so sorry. And then to hear new things like that you felt, maybe it was me who said, I don't remember this, but it sounds like something I would have said because I was vicious when you came inside blaming it on you and saying, what'd you do to Star today? That very well could have been me. And after all of that gaslighting, and you're sitting there and we're all saying, act like she's not dead, eat your steak. I remember being mad at you and saying that too, because I was like, you're going to trigger him, he's going to kill us all, shut up, so that song where I say, eat your steak, eat your fucking steak, that came from a angry part of me that didn't understand the dynamics, but just was angry at you.
Damn.
I think that caused me to have very low empathy and to be very abusive and to just blame you. And that was so wrong. And I'm so sorry for doing that. And then Dad to promise that he's going to bury her. I didn't know that he went inside and had this conversation with you and that you saw him cry. Because I didn't see him cry. I just saw the psycho who's like, you need to be a man. And then had me go out there and try and do it. And then I couldn't do it. And then mom helped me. Mom came outside and helped me do it. But I didn't know he came in and cried to you and promised you that he would bury her. I promise I'll bury her. And that'd just be total bullshit. I'm sorry that he did that to you. That also was abuse and ultimate manipulation. Like, I can't think of a more manipulative, like, you don't get your reality type of situation that somebody could be in. And I'm sorry. And then, yeah, when I'm walking with you and the next day, I remember telling you something. I remember being paranoid that the cops were going to get called and like that there could be an investigation. And so in my mind, I literally was like, I got to tell her something fake in case the cops ask her so they won't know where we put Star.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was thinking this at 11.
Yeah.
And you're 10. And so I was like, I don't know. That was my imagination. We put rocks in the bottom of a bag and sank her. But that's, what a fucked up lie I told you.
It makes sense. I remember like asking if we should take Bobby to the hospital and like get tested for rabies, because I didn't understand the concept of rabies when I was little, and mom being like, no, because then they're going to want to test Star and we can't provide a dog to test. So no one can know about Star's body. I remember that being told to us, so I could see why you came up with this lie of like, I can't tell her to put her in the garbage can because she might go look in that garbage can or tell cops.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. My goodness. So what's it like now to see, you know, that I was so evil and mean to you, and so was mom and dad in the situation, right? And now things have changed and now we're talking about it, but is that still how does that feel for you to have, you know, me who hurt you so bad and did all these things and we're talking about it and to acknowledge it? What's it like for you?
I mean, it's definitely healing, someone being able to acknowledge their wrongs. So, and, you know, a relief. So it's definitely healing and relieving. But, you know, there's still pockets of me that deal with the trauma in my everyday life that have impacted me, and even, you know, the way that I parent, and it's impacted me in my relationships. So I think it's wonderful. I don't think a lot of people have the opportunity to have this kind of conversation with someone who abused them. I don't think a lot of people will ever admit their wrongs. So I recognize that this is such a blessing that we get to live in this space, as opposed to someone who never receives an apology, someone who doesn't get to work through this. So at the same time, I'm really grateful that we get to have this.
Yeah, me too. And I think that it's valid that you have parts that have to deal with that on a daily basis as a consequence of the abuse that we did to you. And that's something that you live with because of us. And I want to help you somehow, you know. I know it's not like I think I want to be accountable, and I want to validate you because that's what you weren't given. And I want to prove with many years of faithfulness to you and years of treating you right and acknowledging, you know, that I was mean and abusive, and looking at it deeper like this helps me too. And I could not see your perspective at all at that age.
Yeah.
But you deserve that though. You deserved a brother who could see your perspective and who would sit there with you and hug you and have comforted you. And I wish that I had those skills then. I have them now, but I didn't then. And the model that we had was what it meant to be a man was just like a grizzly bear. It was just a ferocious beast.
Yeah. I am well aware that you went through trauma as a child and that you were abused. And I mean, I don't look back at my childhood and wish that you did things differently, because I think that you were just doing the best that you knew how to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. You too. Yeah. I think now that I have, like, now that I understand the pain that's there and have sat with myself in those different moments, I can, like, it's allowed me to see more love, especially for you. Sweet. And, like, I remember, like, being best friends as kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for years, sorry, got me choked up. But for years, I couldn't appreciate that. It was like it was blocked off.
Mm-hmm.
And not always, but like certain parts of me couldn't appreciate it, I guess.
Yeah.
And so now that, like, those parts of me that were those hidden pockets, now that they're seeing the love and feeling more free, I feel even more gratitude for you. And, like, I think that so much of the good that I am is because of you too, because you in my life. So, yeah, I'm sorry I spent so many years in our childhood not seeing that, though.
I think that we had great moments. We had bad moments and terrible moments.
Yeah.
But I always knew that you loved me.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, I always used to say you were the reason I never needed an imaginary friend. We were little best friends.
Yeah.
And I love you, and it's okay. And I'm sorry too, because I know that I wasn't the sweetest either.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Well, for people that don't know, let's talk about when our relationship started to change. At what age things started feeling safer with me, when you felt like you weren't being gaslighted and abused by me.
Things started to change for me when we got into high school, maybe. Like, once you got saved, you became a bit nicer, I think, or a lot nicer. You definitely still had anger issues, but you became a lot sweeter and a lot more caring. So it started to change when we were in high school, although, as you know, we did still fight a lot in high school. I dated boys that you didn't like, and that created a lot of problems between us. It was really after high school that I think things started to get, even better. And we started actually talking about our childhood. The moment that, well, it's interesting because I always felt like you were a safe place. Our dad was never a safe place, and I always felt like you were my safe place, and Dad always instructed you to take care of me.
Yeah.
So no matter what, you were always a safe space for me. And then it got better in high school. After high school, it got significantly better. I think once we kind of both got from underneath I still lived with Dad, but we both were able to gain like a new perspective and like see outside families to realize that what we were going through wasn't normal. Because for the longest time, I thought it was normal.
Me too.
I thought this is how dads were. I thought dads stayed up till in the middle of the night and then slept for days. And I just thought it was normal.
Right.
So it was when we got out of high school that I kind of realized, like, oh, shoot, this is messed up. Like, we are going through some stuff. And there was a moment where you had told me that our dad was addicted to meth for several years. And I had never realized that. I just thought that his erratic behavior was normal because that's what I was used to. Yeah. And I think it was really that moment that I remember there being a very big turning point, because you had let me in on this information that, when I was younger, I kind of felt like everyone didn't tell me things, or maybe you and Mom didn't tell me certain things. I'm not really sure, but I remember that being a turning point.
Yeah, that really was. So it was once I identified Dad's meth addiction to you, which I had been keeping secret for maybe 3 years at that point.
Yeah.
And I maybe told Mom 6 months before, and that changed. So, wow. So when I started going to church is when I started being more kind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so interesting how much church helped me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it put me around a lot of really nice people and showed me this is how to be nice. Like, go and play and learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus our savage dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for those that don't know, I think it's important to say the history of kind of our relationship in high school, because you mentioned you had boyfriends and I didn't like them. So I was over controlling, and I was probably pretty narcissistic too with who you were dating and how you were living your life. I definitely was. Mm-hmm. I could see that now, but then I didn't feel that way. So when we were in, we got to talk about the hot Cheeto story. So what grade were we in? Kindergarten and first grade?
I was in kindergarten.
Okay, we're little kids, kindergarten, first grade, and we take the bus to school. Like brave old kids, we walk, I don't know, half a mile to the bus stop every morning, take the bus to school, we get there. And one day, about a couple months into school, Catie sees these kids that are walking to school. And what do these kids tell you, Catie?
The store down the street has free hot Cheetos.
Free hot Cheetos?
I loved hot Cheetos.
Catie said, what?
Free hot Cheetos.
Yeah. And they said, yeah, follow us. We're going to walk there right now.
I saw nothing wrong with free.
Yes. Little kindergarten Catie. I said, no, Catie, we do not walk away from school. That's like a 10, 15 minute walk that way. What are you doing? I said that in first grade, and you're like, nope, I'm going. Free hot Cheetos. Mm-hmm. And so you walked, and what happened?
I got to the corner where I would have to cross the street to get to the store that had the free hot Cheetos. And then I remember thinking, I don't think I'm supposed to cross the street without an adult.
That's good. That's good.
And I was like, you know what? My brother was pretty mad, and I'm not supposed to cross that street. So what if I'm late for school? I better go back. And I turned around and went back. I did not get my free bag of hot Cheetos.
No, you didn't. But you did get tardy.
It was almost worth it.
Yeah, they called home and left a voicemail.
They did, yeah.
And Dad played the voicemails during dinner. And he's like, Catie, you ride the bus to school. How the heck were you tardy? And he looked at us, and we told him the hot Cheeto story. Mm-hmm. And he said, Jake, get your ass over here. And he grabbed me and took me to the room. And he sat me down, and he said, you are your sister's protector.
Yeah.
If anyone ever tries to touch her, you kill them. Anybody ever tries to mess with them, you beat them down. Any boys disrespect her, you go and punish them. You understand me? I was like, yeah, Dad. And you need to say it. If someone messes with Catie, I'm gonna beat their ass. And I was like, I'll beat their butt. I repeated it, and he's like, no, say ass. I said, if someone messes with Catie, I'll beat their ass. And he even, we went back and sat at the dinner table, and he said, now tell your mother. And I said, if anybody messes with Catie, I'll beat their ass. And that followed me. Like, I became your guardian, because I was really modeled how to care for a woman the way that Dad cared for Mom, and he was so possessive.
Yeah.
So I became possessive over you in areas that were not mine to possess. And I thought, I'm going to church. I have a purity ring. You must be purity ring girl too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, how dare you date this guy? Mm-hmm. Like, you need to date a Christian guy, not some jerk. And yeah, I wanted to possess things that were never mine too. And I was mean. And I think that I want you to know that you didn't deserve any of it. Like, if you deserved a brother who supported whoever you dated and always remained loving to you, and I had that unconditional support of you, which I am now, But I did not have that model for me. I had this psycho man. So I was just like a savage guardian. So what was it like for you to have the savage guardian? Like, what were some things I did that were way too much?
Well, and even taking it back to the hot Cheeto story, I remember sitting at the table and mom telling you in front of me, you pull her hair if she goes off and does something that, like, if she does that again, you pull her hair, you do whatever it takes to make her not go.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because we were only 1 year apart, 13 months apart, for you to be given such a big responsibility.
Yeah.
But, you know, when we got to high school and then I started dating people that you didn't like, I remember thinking, or that was also my model, right? Like our dad was very, very jealous of anything that mom did.
Yeah.
Like mom and I were not allowed to paint our nails. Dad was very specific about what we were allowed to wear. I remember mom couldn't wear skirts. When she started wearing makeup, it was a big thing. And so I was also kind of used to it. I didn't realize that it was super unhealthy. Now being an adult, I realize how unhealthy it was. But I do remember you telling me I couldn't date a guy, and I dated him, and you disowned me. There was a period of, I think, 1 or 2 months where you would not talk to me. You would not look at me. If you did look at me, you looked at me like I was disgusting. And I remember you having many conversations with me, telling me that I wasn't going to be pure, and telling me that all of these things like that. And I remember when I dated that guy and you ignored me for 1 or 2 months, that it was terrible. I remember even your friends knew that you disowned me, because I remember walking home from school one time, and for some reason one of your friends was around and your name got brought up, and your friend being like, oh yeah, like he disowned you, like he's not talking to you right now. And it was like a known thing that you disowned me as your sister, which was really hard because I was always brought up to believe that you were my protector. And so I also had this unhealthy, I don't know if it's an attachment or unhealthy expectation of you as well to protect me. And so when you disowned me for 2 months, it felt terrible. It was crap. And so, yeah, I didn't realize, until I got much older, that you were very controlling over who I dated and things like that. But I also recognize that that was your model and that was my model. I had no idea it was unhealthy either.
Yeah.
That's how dad was.
Yeah. Well, now I know, like, I was narcissistically discarding you. Right? I was just like so hurt that you weren't going to follow my guidelines and let me possess whoever you want to date. Let me control it all. And if you don't follow me, then I have no way to protect you, so I'm done with you. And I felt like that discard was very narcissistic of me. And it was almost like, how there's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That was like my flight way out of it. Like, I'll have nothing to do with you then. And it was wrong. It was very wrong of me to do. And I'm sorry that I did it. And I do see that I learned this from Dad, because there would be times where he would pull away his love as a way to punish and teach. And so I think that just came so natural to me to do it with you. Like, this is where I pull away because I can't take it. And then for me to be so open about it, and you have to not only experience it in between us, but then my friends too, who are like, he's disowned you. Like, that must have hit on another level. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Whew. Yes. So how has that changed over the years? Okay, am I still just as controlling?
No,
Am I?
definitely not.
How did it adapt and adjust, and what? Because I think like people who don't know our story might be like, oh my God, this dude's a fucking asshole. Like, what's she doing sitting across from him right now? And I'm not, if that's the case, you're free to say it, but I don't think it is. And so how did we get to where we are today?
I can't even like pinpoint a moment of when the controllingness stopped, because it just stopped. Definitely after high school, especially once you didn't live with dad, you changed. And I just feel like over the years, you just gain more and more knowledge, and you become more and more aware to be just a completely different person. And I mean, even in my current situation, like, you always prove that you're not controlling. Like, now we're at a place where you are well aware that I make my own decisions, and you stand by me with that decision. And you give me love, you give me support, and you fully have my back now. It's not like I'm going to have your back if you do what I say, but now it's just I'm going to have your back, period. Yeah. So you are absolutely completely different, drastically different. Even, the way that you talk to me is so different, because when we were younger in high school and whatnot, like, you would say very manipulative things to get me to do what you thought was best. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I had to follow. I had to do what those things were. And it's not that way at all anymore. And you don't say things like that. You're not narcissistic. You're not abusive. You're nothing like what we had as what we were as children.
Yeah. I'm so glad. And that's what you deserve. Yeah. I'm glad that we have this now. Yeah. I think that'd be interesting to go into in the future. Or we could talk a little bit about today, but there was spiritual abuse going on that I did, that I was kind of like, I took my controlling guardian mindset, and I went to church, and they taught me the Christian belief system. And that was extremely powerful for me, because it gave me access to a loving father. Mm-hmm. And that was life changer. Yeah. And all these loving people, this community that treats each other well, and even is like charismatic and cries in front of each other, and expresses pain, and then like prays for each other. All that taught me so much. But within that came purity culture. Mm-hmm. And purity culture, when I was a freshman, I got a purity ring that said true love waits on it. And we were told about how we needed to wait till marriage to have sex. Yeah. And I made a commitment. I am waiting till marriage to have sex, because I love you, God. I need you to survive. I'm all in. Right? Mm-hmm. And so then I held that standard to you, and was like, you need to find a Christian man. This is the mission in life. You need to wait till marriage to have sex. Don't you dare do otherwise. Yeah. And then use that purity stuff to put you down, and to probably say that you're worth less than you actually are. And I'm curious if you remember any specifics about how I used that spiritual abuse against you during that time, if you were open to talking about that. Or
yes, I'm willing to talk about it.
Thank you.
I don't know if I can remember specific phrases that you told me. I just remember you telling me if I dated a certain boy, I was going to have sex with him. You just knew I was going to have sex with him. And I remember being like, no, I'm not. And you were like, yeah, you are. And then you basically made it seem like my whole future was down. It would just crash from there if I had sex before I was married. And I remember thinking like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. Like, why is this so revolved around sex? Like, I just like a boy, right? And then I remember you telling me, actually, I do remember a specific situation. We were at youth church in high school, And I had made friends with this boy, and he was super funny, nerdy. Like, him and I made really good friends. And you were very controlling over that friendship. I remember him and I were sitting next to each other at church, watching, listening to the sermon. And it's not like we were like even touching or anything. And you were like, you need to scoot away from him. You are way too close to him. And I remember being like, what are you talking about? Like, this is just my friend. And you were like, you need to scoot away from him. And like, you told me I couldn't sit close to boys. You told me I wasn't allowed to wear shorts because they were provocative.
Oh my gosh.
And I remember being like, but this girl, Haley, wears shorts. And you were like, yeah, but who's your standard?
Really?
Yeah.
Dang, I was hitting you hard. Oh my gosh.
I remember you told me that I needed to like be aware of myself because it was basically my fault if a man had a downfall. I remember you telling me, like, when any man looks at you, he sees, the first thing that he sees is you naked. And so you need to watch what you wear, and you need to watch like the way that you're presenting yourself, talking to people. And that's still something that I think about till this day.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it's crazy. Yeah.
Oh, man, I am so sorry. I hit you over the head with the hardcore purity culture. Just all like, you read the stuff like, what is some like toxic beliefs that belong to purity culture? I was like, all of them, like, hey, it's your job to control another man lusting after you, and that you were not allowed to sit by your friend. You weren't even allowed to have a friend. And I shamed you for that, hardcore. And everything was about sex and how you better not. And you're just like, what? Like, and I didn't allow you to figure that out on your own. And I didn't, allow you to have that freedom to be like, I'm going to figure this out however feels right to me. Instead, it was all of these standards on you and like pressure, significant pressure. And I thought I was doing the right thing and teaching you.
Right.
But definitely was doing a poor job at that. And I'm so sorry. And you deserved a version of me that I am now, where I would be like, you get to do you. You know what I mean? Like, this is your life. Like, don't get pregnant. I'll save the thing to tell you if you were single today.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I was so, like, church to me seemed like the right thing because I knew Dad was so wrong. And I'm like, whoa, we got to turn away from everything we've been taught.
Yeah.
Like, don't trust it. If you go down this path, it's going to be fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, be a virgin till you're married, and your God's going to provide you the right one. We need to follow God absolutely correct. And even though that was also hypocritical of me, because I'm not perfect, and I wasn't perfect then.
Yeah.
And you know that more than anybody. But I was like holding you to the super fake standard that wouldn't have made you any more valuable than you are now. And you deserve to be told that. And I'm sorry that I was so abusive with spiritual abuse too. I've like read about it in books, and I thought, yeah, I did some of that to Catie, but never realized like, holy crap, I really did. I did it bad. I did it so bad. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I still experience some, there's still things that affect me to this day, right? Where like, and I'm sure that affect many women, things that were put on us that were never ours to carry.
Right.
But again, I think that you were trying to run to something. You were running away. You were just trying to run away from your dad, that you ran to something so hard, and you didn't have someone to teach you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I also knew that if you did have sex with somebody, I would want to kill him.
Yeah.
Like, that was, I was raised that way.
I remember knowing that. I remember knowing that.
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I wanted to kill those guys. And
Yeah, well, our dad taught you
yeah, he did.
no one messes with me. I remember one time when I was in high school and I was dating that boy that you didn't like. We were in his truck around the corner from school. We were making out in his truck. He took his shirt off and we were making out. Like nothing even happened beyond that. And someone called the cops. The cops came, knocked on the windows, and he was almost 18 years old.
Right.
And I was a freshman. And
Yeah.
so they were like, well, because you're 18, we need to because you're almost 18 in several months, which is stupid, but whatever, we're going to tell your parents. Yeah. So I remember going home and you and Mom got home from the grocery store. The garage was open when the cop showed up. And the cop going up and being like, ma'am, I got a call, or I don't know what he told her and you, but basically said that I was making out in a truck with a guy who was almost 18 years old.
Yeah.
And then I remember the cop telling Mom, but they weren't breathing hard. And I remember overhearing it and being like, what does that matter? Like, that's how pure I was. Like, like I was like, why would he say they weren't breathing hard? Like, it was just so weird to me why he would bring that up.
Yeah.
And then remember Mom coming and telling me like, this is what the cop said. I remember asking her and she just giggled. And then she was like, I'm going to have to tell your dad. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm going to get killed. But then telling Dad, Mom told Dad, and Dad's question was like, well, was that the first time she ever kissed a boy? Because that would suck. And then that was it. That was all that Dad said. But then that's when you disowned me. That's when you did not talk to me for an extended period of time as after that happened.
That makes sense, yeah. Can I give you context into why? Do you want a context into why I was so mad? It actually has to do with a misunderstanding. So during that time, I do remember hearing about this. I remember the person that it was with. It was a senior, and in the locker room, I overheard him. Well, this was somebody who was very promiscuous.
Yes.
He had many different.
Yes, he wasn't a solid.
No, this was like
significant other at all.
This was like the dude who's like, let's party,
He's a player.
let's
Let's
F
get
whoever
girls.
we want.
Yes.
And the day before at practice, we're in the locker room, and he said, oh, she was so cute and so hot, and she had never done it before, and she was down on her knees, and I put it in her mouth, and he went all into about how a chick gave him oral sex. And so I thought it was you.
I see. It was not me.
Well,
But I can see why you thought it was me.
yes. And the next day you were caught in the car, and I'm like, bullshit. This motherfucker was lying. It was Catie who he's been hooking up with. That's what
It wasn't me. That's the crazy part.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I could see why you.
Well, I totally believe you. It wasn't you, right? I thought it was. And I remember, I felt so conflicted because a part of me wanted to kill him. And then this other part knew, like, this is not worth killing somebody over for. Like, this is, then the Christian part was like, I don't know what to do. Like,
Yeah. She's ruined.
Yeah. But this angry part of me was really thinking about, just like in this way that mirrored how Dad thought.
Yeah.
And it was like, death is the punishment. And he had already threatened to kill us. Or at least, had he threatened to kill you too?
Yeah. I remember him yelling at the both of us often, like, I'm going to kill you. And having to work out until we felt like we were going to die.
Yeah. Many times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so then that version of me came out, and you did not deserve that. That wasn't because of you. It really had nothing to do with you. And yet, you were the one that received all of the abuse and the punishment from me often. And here I thought I was loving you.
Yeah.
And I think I knew that it was hurting you at the time, and that's part of the reason I did it. And I think that's part of like the narcissistic discard is it's like, I'll teach you, I'll make you miss me. And so it's, in that way, it's abusive because it's intentionally hurting somebody, right? Versus finding a different way of like using words and coming to agreements and being okay with boundaries and things like that. Like I didn't, like I would now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate you talking about that. And it's that, like, the whole purity lesson, that was part of the reason why as I got older, I had to deconstruct from those things, like take them apart, understand what it was I was taught and really like pushed into me by this youth group. And, but I never, until this situation, until we're talking now, like now I'm realizing like how much purity culture toxicity I'm guilty of with you more than anybody, my little sister. Wow. And I'm sorry that you live with that now every day, and that does impact things negatively, and that is my fault. You know, like I'm there, or at least I'll take my credit in that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't think it was, your fault. No, yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about that?
Mm-mm.
Alrighty. So let's talk about after she's gone, right? So in the following days, how did you grieve Star's death? What was that grieving process like for you? Do you have insight into what happened next?
I was not allowed to grieve Star's death, so I didn't.
Right.
I just swept it under the rug like the rest of our family, and I was not allowed to cry about it. I wasn't allowed to grieve it, so I did not grieve her death the days to follow, or really the years to follow. I do remember that's when I started becoming very angry. I started feeling very angry at that point, and I think that's partially due to me not ever being able to grieve my dad killing her.
Yeah. What was that anger like, and as it became more prevalent? And
uncontrollable. I remember feeling just this deep anger and trying to express it, and then you and Mom always telling me I was very dramatic. And I remember like trying to express my feelings about something, and you guys being like, "You're so dramatic. That's not even how it really is." And I remember being like, "I wish you could just like step into my brain for a moment and feel what I'm feeling, because this is not dramatic. Like this is truly how I feel." Right. And just feeling so misunderstood. And yeah, just felt like deep anger.
Yeah. So then we attacked your deep angry part by calling that part dramatic, and like shamed this part into speaking. Mm-hmm. Did it feel like you had to push that part down to not receive our abuse, or?
I think I definitely had to hide it or not show it as much, but I do think I always, no matter what, like I think I always tried to like share my feelings even when I was told not to. I think I repeatedly got angry, or, I think I was one of the only ones in our family who would tell Dad stuff back. And it's probably because he wouldn't kill me in the same way that he might kill you, right? But that would also turn into these terrible screaming matches between Dad and me. My mom getting mad at me. Our mom getting mad at me. But I remember most of my anger was towards Dad.
Yeah. Well, I think for you too, you and Mom have more wounds that she caused you than me. Like mine are more wounds of neglect, where she wasn't able to keep me safe, and she didn't find a solution to stop the abuse. Mm-hmm. Where yours are more like direct things, mean things that she said to you, like, and gaslighting things, like, and so the abuse really put her in this spot where she just was like perpetuating the abuse onto you.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, I do remember there was times when, if I made a decision that mom didn't like, the first time I ever smoked weed, mom didn't talk to me for weeks. And I remember writing her an apology letter and telling her how sorry I was. And I left it on her dresser. And I remember she got home from work. I went and looked at the letter was gone and she still wouldn't talk to me. And she ignored me for weeks. And oftentimes when we were kids and all the way growing up, she would side with you. Even when you were being mean, even when you were in the wrong, mom would always side with you. She would often just take your side. I remember when we were in high school, you had a car and someone came and they got ketchup and I think they wrote cheater or something on your car. And it wasn't my car. I did not drive. I had no driver's license. I didn't drive. I was terrified to drive. And mom blamed me. She was like, I think, did you go and cheat on your boyfriend? Because I think someone did this because of you. And I remember being like, this isn't even my car.
Yeah.
And no, I did not cheat on my boyfriend, which was super painful.
Right.
Because that wasn't in my character at all.
No.
And she would I was like the scapegoat. She would side with you often. And I think it's because you were being physically abused that she felt that she had to do that. She maybe thought that you couldn't take another parent, abusing you or not taking your side. But I don't think what she realized back then is I was also being abused. And she added on to the abuse a lot more.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. I validate that. And she did take my side, and we both kind of go to her and explain, maybe, as kids do to the parent, and way more times she'd take my side. And I think that maybe some of it was my manipulation, and then some of it was her not wanting to push back on dad and not wanting to rock the boat and being like, that's dangerous. You can't be dangerous like that. You need to be secretive. You can't get caught. That's how I don't know why that's coming to me, but does that sound right to you at all? Or how do you see it?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely. We were always told to not let dad find out things. If anything went wrong, don't tell dad. That's the motto. I remember my third grade teacher would give us happy face stamps or a straight face or a sad face, depending upon the week that we had. And then I remember mom having a conversation with our teacher and being like, if Catie gets anything other than a smiley face, make 2 copies so I can give her dad the one with all the smiley faces. And if she doesn't do well, give me a separate copy so her dad can receive the one that shows that I was perfect.
Yeah.
So, I mean, from a young age, we were always instilled to hide, protect, don't tell anyone anything. When we're around family, you keep it secret. It's hush hush.
Yeah. She was working really hard and making us work way too hard to meet dad's standards. And what were his standards for us?
Perfection.
Yeah.
Absolute perfection, but not even...
Like on spelling tests when we were kids.
Yeah, spelling tests. Oh my gosh, I'm terrible speller. Still am to this day. Absolutely terrible. But we were expected to have perfection and all A's and perfect grades. And I remember praying as a kid, my report card's about to come out tomorrow. God, please, I'll read the Bible tomorrow if I could just get A's.
Please, God.
Please.
100%, please. Yeah. You could miss one.
Yes.
And then you get 90%.
Yeah. And then I remember I got a C on a report card, and our babysitter was like, I'll put padding in your pants. So whenever your dad spanks you, it won't hurt that bad. Because I knew that a B stood for belt.
Right. Yeah, I remember that too. So B stood for belt. Mm-hmm. How old were you when you first heard that, do you think? What grade?
I wasn't even receiving grades yet when I heard that.
Right. Yeah. I think I was in first grade. So yeah, I would put you in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And it was my spelling tests. They're the one thing I got graded on. And he would say, you better get 100%, or, B stands for belt. Mm-hmm. And from once I got into about 3rd grade, that got more serious to where he started threatening us and getting more scary. And then I started, when the teachers would pass out our tests, I would feel this like pit. I didn't know what it was, but it just felt like something going in my stomach and twisting it and everything kind of shrinking in. Yeah. And I was like, whoa, and I'd have this crazy feeling every time. And I remember being like, what is going on? And I learned that was anxiety later. But you don't know. I mean, it's like, what the freak? And I think that actually, ironically, decreased my academic performance.
Right.
Did with yours too?
Stress the frick out.
Right. Yeah.
I couldn't focus on studying because I was over there praying.
For real.
Grades.
You're just praying. God,
please, Lord,
teach me to spell these words, Lord.
I think he did. Here I am.
Oh, we had these crazy expectations. Yeah. And so then, do you think that taught you to have that perfectionistic part that seeks after that? And did that stick with you at all in life, or?
I think it's stuck with me in my parenting, especially of my daughter. I sometimes expect her to be perfect, or when she misbehaves, I'm like, what? How could you misbehave? And so I consistently have to step back and look at the picture and ask myself if I'm requiring too much of her.
Yeah.
Because of the unrealistic expectations I had. And I do think that, mom was really hard on me. And so I'm really hard on my daughter.
That makes sense.
And so it's definitely impacted me far, way far into my future. And something that, like, losing our dog, I realized this a few years ago in therapy. Ever since I was younger, I've always have this fear that people I love are going to die. Like if I'm saying goodbye to my kids and they walk out the door and then they come running back to me like on a whim and give me an extra big hug, my thought is like, wow, my child's going to die right now. And that was me getting one last hug with them.
Yeah.
Or if they give me an extra phone call, or if my mom calls me, or I get a nice text message, I'm like, oh, they must be about to die right now.
Yeah.
And I never knew why. And then I was talking to my therapist about it, and she was like, that's morbid anxiety. Do you remember the first time you ever lost someone? And I was like, at the time, I hadn't lost anyone. So I was like, I haven't really lost anybody. No one's really died in my family at that point yet. And then I remember thinking back, going deeper and being like, oh my gosh, my dog was unexpectedly taken after I had this really wonderful day with her. I had such a good day with her that was unexpected, like we went in on a walk and all these things that were not normal. And then she died that day. And so now I have this fear that when something good happens, it's going to die. It's going to come crashing down. And so that's something that's affected me drastically. And I even have to be aware of when I'm talking to my kids, because sometimes I feel like the need to tell them like how dangerous the situation is or how bad it is, because I'm so scared I'm going to lose them when I'm instilling these anxieties that they don't need to have.
Yeah, they're probably not going to die.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally agree. It makes so much sense that Star's death created morbid anxiety around death. And then I think that also we were constantly exposed to death throughout childhood, where that was a consequence we considered.
Yeah.
Like, that might happen. Is that going to happen today? I hope it doesn't. It could happen. And then we had to also consider it for others, not just ourselves, but for our mother. Quite often. And then ourselves and each other.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that we have neural pathways that are more connected and open to the thought of death could happen. Parts of us are like, we know what goes on in life. Yeah. So how have you found anything that helps that part out when that part comes up and it's like death could happen, it happens. What helps you to
What my therapist has taught me is that I need to take a step back and look at all of the times that death has not happened and remind myself that death does not always happen. So
right.
just taking a step back rather than like being in that moment and letting that moment just completely like infect my brain and set it on fire. Like,
Right.
take a deep breath, take a step back, look at the situation. Your child just loves you and wants to give you a hug.
Yeah. Yeah. So you look at the evidence and that kind of helps you to be like, it's not as likely as it seems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That part that was aware of death, do you feel like I have that same part? And it seems like mine really didn't want to die and didn't want other people to die too. Does that seem true for that part of you?
No. When I was younger, I wanted to die. I really wished I would die because I hated my life so much as a child. I remember laying in bed and praying and pleading with God that he would take my life because I knew that I did not have the strength. I don't know if that's the right word, but I knew I couldn't commit suicide. I just couldn't do it because I had this belief that if I committed suicide, I'd go to hell. So I remember praying and pleading with God that he would let me die in my sleep so that way I could wake up in the morning, or I would not wake up in the morning, and then my dad would have this life-altering moment where he would change who he was because his daughter died and he'd become a better person for you and for mom and for Bobby. I remember praying that often and being like, Lord, you can use me. You can, if you want to take my life so my dad will change, I'm okay with that. Like, please just let him change and take me because I can't do this anymore. So I more so wanted to die.
Mm-hmm. So that makes sense, that why you wanted to die. Does that part that wants to die show up also when it's going to school or you're saying goodbye? Sorry, we won't use their name. When your kids are going to school, do you think that part's there too?
No, I don't feel it show up then like I want to die. When those moments happen where I experience morbid anxiety with my kids, if anything, I'm like, I need to live for them, but I need to do everything in my power so they don't die.
Yeah.
So I need to talk to them and tell them the reality of the reality of situations. Or I need to make sure that they're safe.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So the part that thinks about, oh, I could die and then it'd be all over. I have that same part. It's just interesting. That part, does that one more show up for yourself? Like when you think about maybe you'll die and then it's like, well, that wouldn't be so bad because, or what's it like for you?
Yeah. Well, before I had kids, especially, I would definitely experience like the feeling of like, well, if I die, then I wouldn't have to deal with this. Right. But since having kids, it's changed a lot,
Because they come in mind.
My
when
kids
you think
come
about
in mind like
if you died. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I think it's sweet that even within that you were sacrificial. Like you could tell that you were the scapegoat. You didn't have that word and didn't understand the role from that perspective, but you definitely knew you felt blamed by everybody and attacked and always gaslighted with all the lies and everything. But even then you still had this love that was like, I want my dad to change because that would lead to life being safe. I'm willing to die so my family could have that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very deep and sacrificial, and I think that speaks to how much you love us all. And I hope that you never have to sacrifice yourself for me. Okay?
Yes, I know.
From now on, you don't have to die for me anymore. Let's just stay alive. But I'm touched by your love for us. Yeah. Even when we were all so mean to you. My goodness. You're an amazing human. Thank you. So, if people hear our story and they're like, it's crazy how you can talk about the past and like this siblings. I think a lot of siblings want better relationships. Interestingly, it seems like a lot of siblings want it, but there's one that is not willing, or at least that's how they both perceive it. I don't know. Yeah. What's a good step? Like, what is something we did along our road that helped us to get to where we're at today?
Well, I think the hardest part in conflict is the person who did wrong admitting that they were wrong. I think that we are only at this place because you have recognized your behaviors and the patterns that were unhealthy and that were abusive. So yeah. I think that you took the hardest step by actually looking at your own actions, which I think everyone can do in general. I need to look at my own actions and how I behaved as a child and how I behave every day. Yeah. But I think that's the first step. And I think that's not something that people want to hear, though, because a lot of people, you can't control anyone. Right. For those who were hurt, they can't make their siblings see that they did them wrong. They can't make them admit anything or recognize their behavior. They can't. So my advice is you work on yourself and you find healing for yourself, because you can only control yourself. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I like it. That's true. You can't do anything else for your sibling. So I guess what I would say then to the other people that did the abuse out there is, if they're listening, that maybe their sibling could be as forgiving as you, and could be as like, if the abuser takes accountability, if the abuser does the inner work, if they say, oh, I'm going to really take accountability here, I'm going to look at what I did, I'm going to admit it, I'm going to even admit it was abuse, and I'm going to apologize. I think the way that you have always come to me and received it has always been with love. And it hasn't been like, oh, now you're weak, I'm going to attack you back. Like, I don't feel attacked by you. I feel like you're a very safe person too. And I think that that's for the siblings out there that, might receive it in the future, and to the brothers that might step up, or the sisters that might need to step up. Mm-hmm. From this point of view, I feel a lot lighter. I feel like you deserve that too. And like what we have here is worth living to me. Like our relationship is as valuable as a marriage. Yeah. Like and that's what family can be. Yeah. But it wouldn't have been that if I didn't work on myself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would be still doing the same stuff, I'm sure. And I'd be in a marriage that's very similar, and I would be treating my kids the same way that he treated us. But there's a different path. Yeah. Any other reflections on what might help people? Or what it's been like being the sibling that receives it? Like, any tips? I feel I know that I am of the low percentage of people that get to receive an apology that actually have someone in their life that abused them that changed. I don't think it's common, is my opinion. So I just feel for those people who are still waiting on their apology, and who are still waiting on someone to recognize their behaviors and say sorry. And I just hope that those people know that, like, we see them, it's understandable, their hurt was real, and the pain is real, and it's validated. Yeah. And I'm sorry that they don't get to have a sibling like I get to have. Like, I wish everyone could have this.
Me too.
Because I don't think many people do. So I think you are very brave, and you are very loving to be at the place that you're at. because it takes a really strong, brave person, and not many are willing to walk this road. But obviously, it can be quite beautiful when people do.
I can't. Well, you really made it easy. No, it hasn't been easy, but you made it so rewarding just by being you. Your storyline of Star is like, the timeline is like different than what I recall. And that doesn't mean that I'm right and that you're wrong. Like, the memory is so like, like we're looking at, so did we eat dinner first, or did we, did me and Dad go bury the body right away? Or not even bury it, but went out to supposedly bury the body, then we couldn't. And we threw it in a dumpster. But there is discrepancies there, but I think that makes sense because, like, we have different brains, and our brains are trying to make sense of these events in their own order. So yeah,
definitely.
Hearing yours even today is eye-opening, though, and there's certain aspects of it I didn't know. I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense. It does make sense that he already had the stakes going. Like, in my mind, I was like, no, well, have you heard the story from my perspective of like what these songs mean?
Maybe.
I'm curious.
You mean like from the stories from your Instagram, or from your reel?
Yeah, kind of like what happened when we went to take Star out, and how we tried to bury her, and I mean we've talked about it over the years. So maybe I could. Well, I don't know if I need to say it. I was thinking so that the podcast could understand. Like, Star bit Bobby on the face. And I remember that, you had been working on Star's pen. You didn't just trim her hair, and you didn't just take her on walks, but I think you also shoveled her poop. Is that right?
Now that you say it, I do remember. Yeah.
Because I remember I was like, what the heck? Katie's picking up her poop. She's never done that in her life. Like, what is going on? And I was so happy. And I'm going to steal some of your water. Is that all right? Here's your abusive brother coming out. Still there.
It's mine.
So you had never done that before. And part of the reason that it was taking you long, I remember it took you a long time to do it, was because oftentimes I would get her poop, because we had like the side yard that had these pebbles, and it was pretty big. It was like, I don't know, like maybe 30 feet, across, maybe 40 feet, and 4 feet wide of rocks. And so she pooped in that area. That was her pen. It was gated off in the corner. And I would pick up her poop sometimes, but a lot of times I would just like push the rocks over it, or I'd like bury the poop in the rocks. And that's what I'd do if I was lazy. And so I remember you were doing her pen, and I like went out there and I was like, hey, you know what? Some of the poop, you gotta like dig. You gotta dig through all the rocks.
You remember that? I totally forgot. I do remember that.
Yeah, I'm like, you gotta dig through these. And you're like, how'd they get down here? And I was like,
she just kind of kicks the rocks around.
Yeah, Star does that. Yeah, it's like hide and seek.
Okay.
You're like, they're all really old and moldy. I'm like, yeah.
Her stomach's messed up.
Yeah, so I remember that going on, and me being inside, and Dad had went and got steaks, and also Hollywood Video he went to, and he got a DVD. Remember we were like sitting there watching it, and that's when Bobby screamed. And so he must have had steaks on the grill. I remember him like running out, and then I remember me thinking, oh, Katie's out there. I need to get her. Because that was, me like wanting to protect you. And so I ran out the back and followed him around the side. And he was like calling her name, like crazy man. And I remember you being like confused as you were like raking up the rest of the poop. And I think you had gotten all the poop out of her pen. And then she never pooped in it again. That's the heartache, right? And so he ran past you. And I said, come inside. And you're like, what happened? What's going on? And at that point, he was just about, he went and grabbed her and was about to start beating her. And then I remember us going in the house and, and treating Bobby. We could hear her through the walls. And then it stopped. And then he called me outside and told me I needed to help bury her, or help get her in off the fence. He told me I needed to bag her body. You need to get the biggest bag you could find and put her in it. And then I tried to do it by myself, but I was disgusted and afraid and terrified and also going numb and like feeling like I'm not allowed to be sad or heartbroken. I need to be strong. And that's when I tried to do it, and she was too heavy. The weight was too heavy to get her leash uncaught. Mm-hmm. And then Mom came outside a few minutes later and was like heartbroken and was like, you can go inside. You don't need to do this. And I was like, no, I'm doing this. He told me to. You need to lower your voice. You're being too loud. Because she was like saying, he shouldn't have done this. How dare he? And I'm like, lower your voice. If he hears you, what if he walks out right now? And she's like, and she got quiet. And then we took her off the fence and put her in a bag. And I thought we just took her right into the truck, because I remember me and Mom carrying her to the truck and putting her in the bed, and we had backed up the truck to the garage. But it makes sense that before we did that, we put her in the garage. Is that where she was?
So she was outside, right outside the door on the little
cement
patio.
slab.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. She was right there on the cement slab, and you got to hug her there,
Mm-hmm.
which, yeah, you sharing that, it's like, oh, I didn't remember that, but now it's like, it totally makes sense that that's there.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to say goodbye to her. I was thinking, but it was through 2 heavy-duty plastic bags.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I could see her tongue hanging out of her mouth because the garbage bags were clear. And I remember like looking, and her tongue was just out of her mouth.
Yeah.
And just, limp. Like her whole body was just limp. So you and Mom must have taken her off, put her there, came inside to eat. That's when we ate. Right. And then I remember you guys loading up, you and Dad loading up to go dig her after dinner, because I had to do dishes and clean up while you and Dad left.
Well, see, this whole time I was thinking that we had bagged her up, and then we took off and came back and ate dinner. But it makes sense that we ate dinner first, and I just got the 2 confused.
So I think maybe when you and Mom were outside getting her down, that might have been the point where Dad was inside crying with
couch.
me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then he brings the steaks inside.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Mom come inside, and we eat dinner, and Star's body is just right out there in the truck in the driveway.
Well, so I didn't say bye to her yet. So you guys must have took her off the fence, put her in the bags, left her body right there so I could say bye to her. You came inside, we ate dinner, and I was like, when am I going to see her? When am I going to see her?
Yeah.
And then finally I could go see her. So I went out there, said my goodbyes, and you and Mom then went back outside and loaded her in the truck.
That makes so much sense. My gosh. So then me and Dad went, and I asked him too, after you did. I said, can we just bury her in our yard?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, that bitch can't live in my yard. And he went off on a rampage about how she betrayed him.
Yes.
And he did it all again.
I remember when he came inside and he was filled with rage, he kept talking about like, how dare her betray him and bite his son. And I don't know if maybe she how she responded when he was beating her, but I remember he was like just so full of rage.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, so he had that rage the whole ride that we went out. I was like, I know a spot where we can bury her, and I loaded up the shovels and everything like you mentioned, and then we drove out there, and yeah, he was drunk, and I'm thinking he was probably high on some drugs too, because he was wild. I mean, he was so aggressive and angry, and hyped up.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was freaking out, driving me, and I remember being like, damn, I hope we don't get caught by the cops, because he's swerving. Like, he is really driving super drunk, wasted, and we got a dead dog in the trunk. Mm-hmm. And I thought he's going to go to prison. He's going to go to jail. When I was little, I'd already seen him get put in handcuffs before, taken out of our house right in front of me, put in a cop car and driven away. That scared the crap out of me. And so like I had this deep-rooted, I don't want my dad to go to jail. We got to do whatever it takes. I can't be afraid.
Yeah.
You know, Star's a bitch. I even was mad at Star.
Mm.
I know. A part of me like was trying to make peace with what Dad had done, and
Well, you had to do what he was saying, so your mind had to go along with that. Do what it needed to. You had to tell yourself what you had to tell yourself to do what you needed to do.
right. And so and there was disappointment and anger that she bit Bobby in the face.
Yeah.
So I utilized that and turned it into, okay, this is what we're doing, you know. But when I was alone though, there were moments where I would cry and I would feel this connection with Star and this heartache and this pain. But there on that side yard, I knew I couldn't feel that pain. Like it was so clear to me. So I like turned it off. And there are child psychologists that say like when kids aren't allowed to feel vulnerability, then their brains have to adapt and they become less empathetic. And their emotional regulation and their emotional maturity, it stops. It like halts big time. And I think that was certainly the case for me. And my empathy dropped big time. And in those following years is when I became more mean. And then even the next day, I'm like mean to you. And that day during dinner, I was mean to you. And then making up a story about the rocks in the bottom of a lake. Like I'm a mafia. What the heck?
You watch some like 48-hour death show.
I know.
Murder.
Like, were we weird 11-year-olds? we were a little advanced.
I don't know. I remember watching murder shows.
That's what it was. Yeah. All 11-year-olds are creative, aren't they? It's like, this is what happened. So I think that so much of the abuse is how I could be so horrible to you. And that's the sad thing about abuse is like abuse begets more abuse and it passes down. And then even mom, you know, she became this version of her that lacked empathy too. And I think maybe because it wasn't an environment where you could have any vulnerability, it was punished. And now today I felt very vulnerable with you and I haven't felt like you punished me one time, and I always feel safe with you, and I appreciate you letting me be so real with all the pain and things, and then also receiving my apologies and knowing I care so deeply about you. And yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you ever want to do one of these again?
Sure.
What do you hope that this, like I'm sharing our story, right? And so are you. Mm-hmm. You're brave as could be and authentic and genuine, and I admire it. You see that I'm being real with this stuff, and we're doing it together in that way. What do you hope that this becomes for people? Like, what are your hopes for this?
I think that the very sad reality is that many people have had rough childhoods. Many people were abused, went through abusive situations. And I think that, I don't know if it's just our generation or just people in general, like we're taught to be quiet, not talk about what happened to us, not expose people, right? So I think if I could hope anything from this, it helps someone, even one person, to just talk about what they went through so they can receive help and they can move forward. Even if they don't have someone who's willing to admit their wrongs, they can still work on themselves and still find healing with help.
Oh, that's good. I love that. And you want to hear my hope?
Yeah.
I guess my hope is that, like if you do choose to work on yourself, you know that you don't need the abuser to acknowledge it in order to heal. Mm-hmm. But that there is a chance that could happen, even if it feels impossible. I think that we all want to say, like, we have parts of us that are like, they'll never say sorry. But we used to say that about Dad. Yeah. And now I've made these songs and showed him all of it. And somehow he said, sorry, it was me. I was a problem. It was my fault. And somehow he's taking accountability for that.
Yeah.
And that seems...
We would have never.
No.
I mean, a few years ago when you told me you had this idea, I was like, I don't think Dad's going to ever prove that. I remember being like, sure, ask him, but don't get your hopes up. Thinking that it would never, come to take place.
So that, I mean, that shocked me. So it shocked you too. And, what do you think about that? Like, what is that? Does that change your reality at all? That somebody like Dad has changed enough to admit he did a lot of bad and to own up to it? Or what is that for you?
Well, I am a Christian, and I do have this belief that God hears my prayers. So I absolutely do think that people can change and miracles can happen. So I don't think I would have never, ever, ever guessed in my wildest dreams that Dad would have ever apologized or even recognized that he did these things. Because it was always like, I didn't do that. But I think that if it can happen with our dad, it can happen in other people as well.
Yeah. So all they got to do is write a rap album. That's all you got to do. Get on that phone. No. No.
I was not given those skills.
Yeah. No, just kidding. It's so interesting because some people, when they hear that, they're going to be like, F that. Mm-hmm. But that's a part of them that's trying to protect them, right? And
yeah,
that was us for so long. So I think we get that.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is, also why I think people need to focus on themselves. Focus on healing yourself. Because you can't count on someone else to do what our dad did.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious. Do you think any part of me, because I have a lot of narcissistic qualities that I've had to overcome, right? And there's like a foundation there that our dad set pretty hard and life set. And sometimes like me thinking about talking about my life this much feels like, I'm focused way too much on myself. Like I'm going to go tell people all about Jake. Like that's something seems wrong to me for that reason. Because I'm like, I hope I'm not a narcissist. That's I hope I'm not a narcissist part coming out and being like, raise the alarm. Something's wrong here. Why are we talking so much about us? That's how he talks. But what do you think about that?
Okay, wait, what's your question?
Is that part right at all? Is there some part of me that's being a little like narcissistic or talking about myself too much?
I think that if someone doesn't know you or know your heart, I can see someone coming up with that assumption. But I think for anyone who actually knows you and knows that your goal of doing this is so others can find help, that's where everything all the cards fall at that point. This is not to build up you. This is to help other people. And so anyone who knows you knows that this is to help others. This is not for your gain.
Yeah.
This is because this is how you got help and you want to help others.
Yeah. Oh, good. That makes me so excited to think about this actually helping others. And even if it helps just one.
Yeah.
And because I think that our story is super rare. So
rare, but I think so many people went through abuse.
Yeah, that's true. Well, good. I hope they relate to our story and get help, from it. Yeah. But I also, any part of you paranoid at all? Because we're being so...
Yeah, I definitely feel paranoid for sure of I hope people know that I love my mom. I love my dad. I think my mom's a wonderful person. I hope that people don't think I'm a terrible mother when I'm being honest about things that I struggle with, right?
Right.
I hope people know that I love my kids. And so, there's, of course, these fears that pop up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want you to know, I think you're an amazing mom and not a terrible mother at all. And you're the part of you that learned to be perfect and gets frustrated when she's not. You know, I know that you're working with that part, and that part loves her too. And that's what that part's trying to do. And I know you love mom so much, and you're an amazing daughter to her, and you always have been. And somehow you're so forgiving. And I think that you two are going to continue to work through this stuff. And we are too. We're going to think of other things and keep growing closer. And well, okay, we're done. Great job.